let's just go. Let's just do it. Damn it.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
a new light over here. I can adjust. So
Oh,
look at
I'm
this. I
so
can go
jealous.
100%
I should put on
way
some
too much.
more blush because you've got the nice color from your outside sun, and we're in the depth of winter here. So I have like my lightest I'll ever be. I'm
Mm.
jealous.
Yeah, well, you have a natural
I do, but against
color,
you
the
right now with
Miranda.
the rosiness of the undertone, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, yeah, I can get tan, but I get pretty rosy. I get pretty
You get rosy.
red and
Yeah,
rosy. You
yeah,
have more of the
yeah,
natural, nice tan. Yeah.
yeah. Yep,
Well,
Let's do it,
yeah,
Ryan. Let's
Lissette.
hold space.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've got some questions and stuff, and I like what you just said about listening more rather than going and trying to do. So I've worked with a couple of clients lately where the big reason why people fail in business is they're trying to so maybe they start off wanting to be authentic. They start off with their business. They're like, yeah, this is me. This is my business. And I'm going to run it my way. I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to express myself. I'm going to talk about all these things that I want to. And then sometimes it doesn't work, because they don't think a lot. They don't think enough maybe about the other side, about their customer, their prospect, who they're trying to reach, who they're trying to help. They kind of starts off a lot about me. And then when that doesn't work, then they start to see, okay, well, I need to make some money in the business. Like, what do I do? What are other people doing? What are the big gurus doing? I'll try to copy their model. I'll try to copy the way they say things. Maybe that kind of message will work for me. But then they get stuck in this inauthenticity kind of trap where now they're just like a drone. They're talking and speaking like everyone else out there. And so the whole point of this is that instead of just going out and doing stuff, maybe you should start by looking within and listening and really figuring out what it is that you value the most, what you do best, what your strengths are, the best kind of person for you to work with. And then you can start going after those things, and then you just automatically know what to do more so. So that's what that made me
Right.
think of when you
Yeah,
said that.
yeah. I mean,
What do you
and
think about
also
that?
the idea of understanding that being a listener is not being passive. Listening's not passive. Because I think there's a confusion there where there's a whole bunch of people who maybe, maybe that's who I work with, who they want to make an impact, but they sort of are like, I'm listening. I'm almost like a meditative state, of stillness, not understanding that like we have to be of the stillness of like the trees in winter right now with so much activity happening underneath from that processing. It's like processing, like it's not. And so what I see with some of the people that I've worked with in the past is that the same intention and it's not working, but it's really hard for them to understand to be active listeners versus passive listeners and waiting on the sideline, because you do need execution, right? You do
Mm-hmm.
need execution. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people think listening means I sit there forever and then all of a sudden they're never ready, and you're never going to be ready.
Hmm.
So,
What do you think is the best way to influence or get what you want or make a real connection with someone with this idea of listening the right way? And what does that mean to listen the right way in order to maybe achieve your objective?
well, first, I think it's very important. Some of what you were speaking about before was a transition from wanting, if it's a business owner you're asking me about, are you asking in general or about a business owner?
In general.
Okay. So, in general, um, I think it's coming from a place of curiosity, because there's a lot of people who I think you need to get mature enough to show up with a confirmation of some sort of conviction behind what you're presenting and saying, like, this is who I am. And I think there's a process for that. And I think some people need those coaches or guidance or therapists or whoever. But as you get a little bit more mature, the answer to your question becomes come with curiosity. rather than expertise, coming with curiosity, listening to what someone needs. Like, for example, somebody, the wonderful pitch deck you get, the pitch slap you get in your DMs. This week, I got from somebody who's like, offered me some form of accelerator book, something at some point a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm not interested, thank you, because I think that's the kindest thing to do rather than drag it out and just ghost people. And then they were replied back, well, great, like, thanks for getting back to me. Can you let me know, like, what would make this an opportunity for you? And the first thing I said was, well, try making sure you make offers to people that are asking for that.
Yeah.
I was never asking for, like, I've never posted like, hey, looking for somebody to help me publish my book, or like, whatever, like, looking to be in an accelerator group thing, or like, I think they just saw me as somebody who has a message, which is great, but that idea of coming with curiosity to see if you actually have a relationship, because what we're seeing right now is a huge transition from manipulative sales tactics being called making business to do I have a relationship with this person, and what is that relationship? And if in the least, and let's define it, if it's just a transaction, I want that shirt, here's my money, let's just be honest about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is it more than anything. It's the being honest and authentic. And this just made me think of, people, we talk about authenticity and what that means. I don't think that pitch slapping somebody necessarily means you're not authentic. What not being authentic is when you're going in and saying, hey, like, so did, like, it's like worse than, are you just looking for sales? Like, hey, I noticed that you go to the same school that I used to go to. I used to have a friend there. Like, how are things going? That's not authentic. That's
right, because you don't
you're
even
trying
care.
to
You
get
don't
around it.
really.
You don't care. Yeah, no, you're just trying to, like, string something along so that you can make the pitch. I think if you're gonna, because I send out mass DMs all the time. And mass DMs is a bad way to say it, but I have a group, I have a following. I know exactly who is in my following. I know the kinds of things that they want, the kinds of things they care about. So when I have an offer that I think that can help them, I crafted a custom offer for them and I send it out to a bunch of people. But that's what it is, right? I send the message, and I sometimes, and a lot of times I just ask, like, hey, I've got this workshop coming up. It's going to show you how to land your biggest client yet in the next 30 days. Is that something that you'd be interested in? And then that's that. Maybe if they're interested, great. Then I'll send them more info. If they're not interested, then that's fine too. They can ignore me or they'll say no. But, time after time, as long as I think you actually really know who you're talking to and you're giving them something valuable and you're upfront about your intention, you're not trying to hide it. You're saying, like, yes or no, or you're trying to offer value, that's okay. But yeah, what's not okay, I mean, I get, like, messages from, like, hey, do you want to get your PhD in
Right.
like
It's
medicine?
like,
Do you, like, want to go to med school? Like, come on.
exactly. Like, I usually reply, even though, like, that's part of the problem, right? Because again, we're seeing this, like, people who are on automations, and Nutri is trying to bring in technology and trying to, they're obviously looking at keywords that they're matching, and then they're, but and I can only speak for me and maybe people in my network at this point who I tend to attract. I think there's a real division of people who, like, can see straight through that, and some people who are like, oh, I was so busy, I didn't even know this existed and I need it. Like, I have a hard time thinking there's those people, the second people. Like, I think at this point people are busy, tired, dealing with their own stuff, and, like, you should say, again, as part of that relationship, I've looked at things you're posting, like, in your head. I've looked at things you're
Yeah.
posting. I see what you're about, this or this or that. I have an offer that I want to serve you with. And in that way, it helps both of us. Like, this isn't,
Mm-hmm.
and I, again, I work a lot with women who sometimes maybe want to appear less aggressive for the connection or something like that. I don't really know. It depends on the person. But being conditioned into an idea that like, make sure they like you or else they won't listen to you. And I think that's a real conflict, because then once you get into the systems and you're the experienced go-getter and you make somebody money, or you make somebody time, or you give somebody, you know, the vitality they wanted or whatever it was they saw, then all of a sudden they're okay with you being direct and this and that and this and that. And that's a little bit of a hurdle. But right now, that whole idea of just throwing it out there and seeing what you get in the net, it just doesn't work it never worked for women, because if you're too nice or whatever, they don't hear you, listen to you, don't think you're serious, whatever the judgment is going to be, it's going to be. And at that point, you should just use referrals and, you know, really start doing networking instead of just getting names and industry titles and keywords, you know?
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's so many people out there, and there's so many, it's like, it's not even how many niches are out there. It's that you just got to find a tribe of people. But it does take a lot of groundwork, but there isn't just one way. You know, you can't have a shitty profile and shitty content, and you have a bad photo, and you have like no substance to your profile, and you send out DMs. Doesn't matter how good your offer is, you're not going to get trusted. You have to have the full package, and then you can like, so the way I get a lot of calls, the way that even we connected was I sent you a message though, but I was like, hey, Lissette, like, have you tried doing like story leader posts before? You know, I was asking if you tried this type of post, this type of content. And then you probably went to my profile, saw that I was putting out content, you know, got to see what my style is, that I'm like an okay person to at least have a conversation with. And then that's how we were able to connect and then have a relationship. But a lot of people skip those steps. And like, what does that say? Like the state, I want to ask you what you think of the state of the world right now, maybe in those terms of, you know, you go on YouTube, and I'm doing a lot of YouTube research, even just like for prospecting there. And there are so many channels, so many young people, old people, all sorts of different people that are talking about, you know, how you can do passive income stuff and how you can get to 0 to whatever K in a short amount of time. And they have these beautiful channels, and they have nice cameras and equipment, and all looks so good. But I'm just surprised at how much get rich quick stuff there is, and like all the shortcuts that people want to take. I don't necessarily blame anyone, but in your experience, do you think is this happening more? It seems like it's happening more. And why do you think that is?
Because most people run their life on fear, not faith. I mean, it's an evolutionary process. I would expect that from young people. That's where I was. I mean, that's what you learn, right? Like, it's the race and it's the rat race. And like, I mean, especially now, right? Like, so my kids were already being asked, what's your track going to be like before they even entered middle school? Because you're already put on it. And I was like, I didn't even know what I wanted to be maybe till like through high school, maybe taking out my first elective in high school, you know, so we're asking people to sort of be on a track. And so I'm not surprised at that at the younger. What I am surprised is that there's so many experienced midlifers in some sort of career transition who had connections, who have experience, who, you know, whatever, who then jump on that bandwagon. That to me is somewhat a telltale sign of the failure of their maturity level through some sort of level of adulting. I mean, I hate to say it, but like, if you get to midlife, if you get to 40, it's just taking really long. It's taking really long for people to sort of like say, this is who I am and this is what I know. And unfortunately, there's not the loyalty and commitment on the business side or even the industry. Like for me, I ended up having healthcare is healthcare, you think, but like I understood 10 years into it, doing really great, that I am in a different industry than what all of healthcare is. They're in sick
Mm.
care management forever. Like I thought, like I understand they're in sick care, but I thought there was like a need for well care. They're not interested in well care. It takes their business model out. So for whatever reason, I just think we're in a state where, I mean, that's the real conflict here, right? Like we're in sort of this dual world. And I know I sound like a couple, even like
Wow.
2 years ago, still too metaphysical, but like the reality is, if you've ever been on a subway system in New York City, you're standing in your subway, you're in your car, there's a subway next to you, and when that subway starts to go for a second, you're sitting there thinking you're going. But the reality is you're still in your own subway and whatever. And I think we're
Mm.
just in a complete
Wow.
mass global awareness of that. And some people are freaking out because they don't have the integrity. And I'm not surprised when it's the younger people.
Huh.
I am surprised when it's the middle aged. I'm I'm not surprised the really older, but like Gen X and older Gen millennials. I am very surprised at how inequipped they are for this. I mean, it's really hard right now. It is like every history course in one moment right now, every lesson. But so what?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Well, it seems like with the older generation, they were fine. Everything was good. They grew up without having all the technology stuff, all this stuff that we've had just in the past 10 years, 20 years since the
10,
internet
20
came
years, right?
around, everything was all good. And now it's getting faster and faster. We have more and more. And it's like you have to have that stuff. You have to use it. And they never grew up with that. And now it's like you can't like be with the world unless you have all of this technology, but you can, but there's a perception that you do need it, and you have to use it to like be in society or even be healthy and be normal. And I love how you said there's nobody focusing on like well care, like well-being care, health care, as opposed to just like death care. Or people, they're just trying to fix what's sick as opposed to making people healthier. Like that's what our whole society feels like with our phones, and how fast things move with media. It's like it's always, we got to get those dopamine hits back. Like the dopamine is shorter and shorter and shorter intervals that we're always chasing. We're always going after it more and more. And this is something I learned a lot about alcohol. So for the past couple of years, I've been thinking like, man, alcohol is not really serving me. And I've tried to like kind of quit it a few times or cut back, like what works, what doesn't, I don't know. But I read this book and had a realization about what alcohol and just dopamine and drugs are kind of doing. So it's that when you are drinking, there's this state of normalcy, and then when you're
Right,
drinking, you get high and then you go down. And
right,
then when you have that craving for alcohol, it's not like, oh, it would just be nice to have a beer. It's the craving is just getting you back to normal. And then when that wears off, you go back below normal again. And then the craving, that addiction just gets you back to normal. But that normal is where someone who doesn't drink is just at all of the time. So you're not actually getting like a relief or a boost. You're just relieving the addiction that you have to the chemical of alcohol. So like
right.
that's what all this stuff is doing. All this access, these dopamine fueled things are giving us. So it's like we're kind of all sick, and we
Right.
need to get
You're
back
exactly
to the
correct. You
base.
flip that,
Yeah.
right? So flip that to, we used to be in the personal aspect of that. Like when I entered healthcare, what I see now is a holistic leadership need that I feel because people aren't healthy enough to have the capacity to be making the decisions that they're supposed to be making, that are both responsible and accountable. Why? Because they don't even know who the hell they are, right? Without their crutch, whatever it is, alcohol, power, money, whatever their thing is. So what you just described in your experience of alcohol is what people have to understand. What is their alcohol? right? What is their crutch?
Mhm.
And for so long, it's been socially acceptable. It's like me right now. Like I know that, living my little cul-de-sac life when I was bringing up the kids or whatever, it was like I was the odd one out. If I didn't have a glass of wine in my hand, if they invited me over for something, like they were like literally offended. And then I got the reputation, oh, you're too healthy for that. Like it's like a bad thing.
Mm.
Meanwhile, right now, while they're all like suffering through their menopausal chaos and their whatever, now they're like, what are you doing? What are you taking or whatever? I've been telling you for 25 years how you look like this at 52. Okay. It's not some supplement or some whatever. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just doing what I've been doing. And we're seeing that on the social level now. Like but it's just really a few people because unfortunately, I had to live like the oddball out. Yeah, you're right. I didn't go out and get drunk with my friends every Friday night. I didn't go whatever, but I also did probably a lot more on my Saturday mornings. Like that was the trade off, right? Like I didn't have as much friends. I didn't always get invited to people who didn't want to like have a deep conversation about anything in the world. But like, so we're seeing this at the corporate level, right? Like those people learned how to live like me. I went off into entrepreneurship. I made a little bubble. I made a little lifestyle business. But here's the thing, lifestyle businesses are not impact businesses. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time. I mean, I've had a hard time kind of leaping into that. What do I really want? Because lifestyle is great. It's what it's all about. Like, I want to live a life. Is there a place for me now in this sick society? Is there a way for me to be thinking about my lifestyle while I also cause impact? And I think there's a real need right there to bridge that. And it can't be done unless it's a holistic leadership and authority model, because I don't know if there is any authenticity without that now.
Mm.
I think you're barking up the wrong
Yeah, and
tree.
I'd love, yeah, I'd love you to say more about that, what you're doing with Curvy Hustle, because
Right.
that's a great point. That there's all these lifestyle businesses. There's guys that they have like they'll show you how to buy ATMs and put ATMs into stores so that you just make passive income off of that, and you can do I don't know you can do like lead generation and just that's it for marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
you can sell stuff on Etsy, and it's like sure you have a business where you don't have to work a lot and you make a lot of money, but like that is missing the point. That is not. I mean,
Well, for some
that's
people,
it's not like a
that's the
life.
thing.
I, you
For
need the
some people, I
impact
mean, that's
part.
what we're
You need
seeing.
that.
We're seeing that.
Yeah, it's like you can do that
I believe
twice,
that, and
but
that's why we're in the same network. But like, this is what we're seeing right now. For some people, that is their whole entirety of definition of life. Like, what do I get? What do I get? The me concept versus the we concept. Can they coexist? I think for too long, the we concept people, such as myself, I mean, I'm part of that. Like, we were just sort of retreating back into our own, making our own oases that worked for us, but, went to hell in a, whatever, handbag outside. And uh, because of the technology, I mean, I do think it was the past, probably 10 years of being distracted. It all
hmm.
makes sense to me now. It all makes sense to me. All of the stuff maybe was on a spiritual, whatever level of bringing people into their authority.
What do you mean?
Actually, is what we missed, right? We got distracted. A lot of people got distracted in their utopias. Like, it's great. Go off and go make your grid. Go off the grid. Go live in your little pocket somewhere in Idaho. But right now, that doesn't help anybody. The fact that you've been a multi-millionaire living off the grid, getting your income from your ATMs, like, it serves absolutely no help right now, other than if you're going to shift over into doing some impact with that.
Yeah, and how do we find that impact? Because I struggle with this about like what am I supposed to do to help? Like I know, so in my business, I built I did this business. I showed the path that I did. I was walking on my campus sophomore year. What am I going to do for my degree? I got this like strike of lightning idea that was spread good ideas. It was like a message from God, like words in my mind, spread good ideas. Like, what the hell does that mean? You know, I guess that's business. I guess marketing is spreading good ideas. That sounds interesting. I'll do that. And then I had a best friend. He had cameras. So like, hey, videos, marketing, that's the best way to spread a message. Great. And then I started doing more video and it's like I'm doing all this stuff, and now I'm like really into, you know, messaging and sales copy and helping people with their sales processes, and like I'm learning all the components of business. But I still know that I'm not like fulfilling my purpose. Like this all feels like training to me. Like I'm learning all the things that I need to do so that one day I'll build something. And it feels like some kind of organization. Like a thought that comes to me all the time is something that's helping youth in education. Like that just feels like an idea. Is that the right one? I don't know. So, you know, even somebody like me who seems to be, I know I'm on the path. And that's what that's a question I've had. Should I know? Am I supposed to know? Should I be searching? Is it going to come to me? I've heard conflicting things on that.
Well, that's why when you said, like, you know, with what I'm doing, the whole idea of the Curvy hustle, and this is again this kind of like concept, because the first thing people say is they understand the branding of it. Oh, curvy, like a woman. You know, I've even had other women be like, it's so funny that you call it the Curvy hustle because you're such a small thing. You got no curves, like, you know. And I'm always so amused at how, and that is almost an interview for me, right? Like that person's probably too superficial, still not understanding, like, you know, they don't kind of get the whole idea of even like adjusting, adapting, agile, you know, like that concept of being able to go with the flow, which is what I'm hearing you say. How do I know where I'm going with the flow versus going and floating away and getting off target? Is that correct? Sort of what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like I am very in tune with my gut and feeling. Like I know, I just trust. I trust in God's plan, whatever. It's so hard, whatever that is. I don't know if I should say God's plan, Spirit's plan. That's like really how I feel.
I
I'm
know.
very
Well,
like
some of it's
deep.
offensive.
I
I see it as a
know
God.
it's not me.
I see it as a Godhead. I just also don't necessarily see it as like, it depends on the mood. Like, is it Holy Spirit?
I don't want.
Is it word or
Yeah,
is
I don't
it
want people
wisdom?
to.
Let's call it that. Word or wisdom.
Yeah, I still want people to put me in like a religious group because
I
but I
know,
do
but that,
love
again, that's
religion.
the
I
hang up,
love that
right?
too.
I know,
Yeah,
but
like
that's
I
other people's
appreciate
hang
love.
ups.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just say God because that's how I feels the best. I mean,
Yeah, like
God's
part of what you're
the plan.
asking is in that answer. You know what I'm saying, Ryan? Like part of what
Yeah,
you're saying,
yeah.
it's in that answer. It's
That's
like,
my
do I want to work with people who are offended by me having some sort of like God figurehead or supreme intelligence that's packaged in that? Yes or no? I mean, that's the questions we're being asked right now, I think, in everything that's going on. Um,
wow.
and
Yeah.
that's why I have a sacred success path, because that's what keeps the curvy hustler, somebody who would incorporate that beingness, because it's not about what you do on the sacred success path, it's who you be. And so that's why there may be a returning back to certain levels or phases, I like to call them, more than levels, because it's not, I'm trying to get out of the hierarchy, and the language of deconstruction is somewhat of taking the violence out of the way that we speak and being a model of that as best as possible. So there may be a return, but it's more of an involution with the evolution and the expansion. It's like you may choose to involute, you may choose to pull back to study something deeper because you personally did not have the capacity to have that depth when you were dealing with that.
Yeah.
You know, and that to me is a very mature way to navigate. It's different when you trust yourself and know that, and then you have got to then again, well, you don't have to, but like that's your lifestyle. And you can be there in that lifestyle. But if you really know the truth, if you know the wisdom with the words, then you're going to have a connection there that just you, at some point, you understand there's impact. Like when I die, I want to be of a positive impact, not a negative impact. But we have to also understand, which I think it's really hard for some people who are on that track and see the beauty of it. some people are just not on that track. They are here to
Mhm.
self destruct. They think they're evolving, but they're enterprising. And to some extent, it
Mm.
will involute because that's just nature, and it will self implode.
Yeah, and we need that. I mean, we have everything, because if we didn't have all of the sides, all the differences, all the sides, if other people weren't doing all of the things that they were doing, you couldn't do the thing that you were doing. And I think life just gets confusing sometimes because, yeah, we're not sure who to pay attention to. Like, this person
Mhm.
is successful, but maybe I should model them, but they don't have everything figured out just because they're, and then there's all these people that you think that they need help, but maybe they don't even want help. And maybe I'm not even the right person that can help them in the first place. And so it's just, the world's gotten so much smaller for me as I've grown these past few years. It's like I used to want to do everything and go everywhere and experience everything and help all of the people. And I've just realized and felt more and more that I don't need to do that. And I don't have to feel bad that I can't do that. And that I've just gotten smaller and smaller into wanting to help a few people around me as best as I can. Because even if I wanted to help lots of people, I can't even do that unless I help a few people, unless I really help myself too, unless I give myself the best chance of to be my best. How can I help? How can I attract the right mate? How can I be a good father? How can I be a good friend if I'm not exercising and eating well, if I'm not just like doing what feels good for me? And that's, I really want, that's what I like to focus on the most, is trying to help people trust themselves and love themselves, appreciate themselves and who they are, and just get grounded. To me that's the key to everything. If more people appreciated and respected who they are, who they were, then they could show more love and appreciation for others.
Yeah. And
That's how I
that's the
see it.
aspect of the spirituality, which we've kind of, right, compartmentalized into religions. But I heard this really good way of sort of, it was a pastor, can't remember. I think it was Pastor Stephanie with one church. I'm not sure who it was, but she said, um, obedience without intimacy is religion. And I said, oh, that's so great, because that's
Mm.
kind of what we're seeing, right? We have like no intimacy with anyone, including ourselves. So, like, how could we launch that? And in the 20th century and 18th, 19th centuries, like in that life
My
that
God.
didn't
Yeah.
know what we know or couldn't do the damage, like once we made the atomic bomb, we really needed to step up on our spirituality, don't you think? But we almost went the reverse way. I am God, as opposed to, oh, what are you going to do with this wisdom about atoms that probably created the universe? Like
Yeah.
what are you going to do with that? So it is a personal
Mm.
work. It's also like, my thought process is, one of the fourth bubble, after you have awareness, which is an awareness after the hero's journey that starts the sacred success path that I work with. Because there is somebody already there like you already understand that you're at a place of self-care and well-care for the social health care and wealth care. Like, that's its own journey. Some people might be on that forever, never get off the hero's journey, like never get there. And we need to just be
Mm.
okay with that and have the faith that whatever we're doing is stronger, even if it seems like the minority, because the reality is no majority has ever changed this world. It's always been the minority thought that's banded together and had the use of power into a force
Yeah.
that has been changing. Like, we just have to accept that. And then after that, there's an acceptance. Like, you're at that, I see you there. I see you at this acceptance place of like, really, and that's where you really can grasp an authenticity. But then you need to go through this really hard part, which I hear you sort of kind of in. And I think that's where I sort of really want to help people is give you the tools for that atonement or that course correction. Because so many people, because of the foxes of religion or just authoritarian households, have learned atonement meaning punishment. And that's not the definition of atonement. It's course correction. So once we get into
Yep.
that course correction, because we're deciding we're going to stay in this container for this moment. Like I said, your containers, if you do this right, if you go into that fourth phase, which is the authority you're talking about, correctly, you're going to have the ability to step back into any of those other phases without retribution from it. It's only going to allow you to maybe have a bigger container later on. Maybe you start a school later on, but right now the school is for that small community. And I don't think enough people have learned that, being on that linear grind one way. Once you fall off, you got to start all the way again. And there's been a bunch of people kind of at the gatekeeping, which make you believe that, hey, you're not going to skip anything unless you're like me, unless you look like me, talk like me, give me, more me. And we're just sort of breaking that all apart now. But there are people, like, I really am not concerned about the people who can't hear or see me right now. Like I've been told a lot. I've been told even by you, like you're not making it. I'm not interested in not talking in parable because I don't want to give certain people the power. I don't want to give them the tools. I think they're dangerous with it. I think that's what I used to do. Come into my yoga classes. Come into my, holistic healthcare thing. And then I just would equip the wrong people with things that they were not capable of. Much like there's many parents who want to give their 16-year-old a BMW just because they can. That's great. But they don't, there's a certain level of entitlement that comes with that they're never going to learn to get out of. An easy way.
Yeah, you got to earn it. Yeah, you got so much.
And then there's,
well, I think about this in business. Like, yeah, you can get a BMW or whatever. You can have a passive income business, but you're not going to be able to start another business. You're not going to be able to grow that business, or you're not going to be able to turn that passive income business into an impact business, into something really fulfilling, unless you've ground it out for years. I think a truly fulfilling business, a truly fulfilling anything takes work. It takes commitment. It takes discipline. You have to go through that stage, or else whatever you have is not going to feel the same. You're not going to cherish it. You're going to lose it. You're not going to know what to do with it.
Right. Like you're not going to value it, I think. Like I think you're not going to value it, and then therefore you can't sell it or you can't enroll people. And I see this as, that was my stumbling block. I know with my first business, like if I think back, it's like I had the leadership. I was actually visionary and ahead of the game, but that made it hard for me to get the proper mentorship. My biggest problem was, I had the systems, I had the leadership, but finding that mentor that could see that at that time in 2005, when we don't even have, to see, when it was such a different mindset in terms of how it was an authoritarian, hierarchy. It was like people don't have authority. Nobody was even talking about food as medicine or anything yet. Forget pain care. It was like numb it up or cut it off, or, we forget where we were just 20 years ago and how radical it was for 10 years. I do believe now it can be accelerated. I don't think if I went into that now, if I had that gumption now, I could do a lot more in 3 to 5 years. That took me 15 years, but a lot of that was because the rest of the world wasn't ready for it. So therefore I couldn't get the mentorship. The problem now is people are not being able to get the mentorship for who they are if they've actually evolved as leaders. We're in a leadership crisis right now because you're an evolved leader, but there's not a lot of mentors for you in your industry. for where you want to go, because they were teaching manipulative sales tactics to work on manipulation versus persuasion. They did not, like they might have had the character traits for what was deemed wonderful, commanding, authoritative leadership in the past. The gravitas they're telling you to make in your brand is something that right now you personally understand is not healthy.
Yeah, you bring up a good point of mentors or having the right people helping you. Like, I am very happy, blessed, grateful to have like a mentor, like someone who for the past 3+ years that I've talked to almost every day and has just given himself everything he knows, his systems and ways of thinking to me to use, that we've just been friends and have been able to build our businesses together. Like, what an amazing thing.
Right.
And yeah, people, but before that, I found mentors through books, through programs. I was somehow found I was into the right places, the right kinds of teachers, the things I cared about. My mom, when I was younger, we went to a church, not necessarily church. There's this I guess way of, well, there are these churches called Unity and Science of Mind. It's
we have
new
those.
thought idea. So I
Like
used to go to those
communities.
churches like almost every weekend. Yeah. So like growing up, I had that, and then what do I think? I just think, God, my parents, like I've had so much luck, spiritual evolution over time.
Luck.
I don't
See,
know,
Brian, but it's not. Is that luck, or are you just anointed? Like, this is the thing. It's like, and I've realized that too. I haven't had the easiest of life, but if I had I've somehow curved been curved into the best teacher. And I also very young sort of knew who was blowing smoke. Like, those are gifts. And that's another aspect. I think the people who will be taking this next phase of leadership probably are gifted people, whether through the fire or just born for this time and this place. And I think we need to sort of own it, like, because of what you just said. Like, you could have got off the tracks.
Right? Yeah,
you didn't.
Let's own it, right? Like, because I want to feel, I don't want to look at anyone and feel like they can't do what I can do. Like, I don't necessarily believe that, but I also have to, because I have to look at my past and see where I've been and what I've learned. Why did I learn this stuff? Why do I think this way? Like, I think at a level that is really beautiful, and I know most people don't, and I wish I could, and I want to give this, though. I want to give this system, like the way that I believe. I want to give
to the people who have the capacity.
I feel bad sometimes.
But the thing is like, if you give it to the more people you give that have the capacity right now, they also will help people. Because what I see you doing is working with leaders who also have teams. So you're a leader for leaders in the specific realm of, impact marketing, or however you want to call that, for that particular group. But that's not leaving anybody out. It's not like whoever's book you read, whoever wrote that book was thinking, I might leave Ryan out one day. I better write a couple chapters to make sure Ryan likes this one day. It's just the word and the wisdom. We've just been taught so much about the word, positive words, positive affirmations, the word of the Bible, the words. And what we forgot was the wisdom. And to be perfectly honest, it's getting into a whole other thing, but wisdom is tied into the feminine. And as long as we're still on this whole like hierarchy between masculine, feminine, patriarchy, social system, and so we're so confused in that and don't see those elements in us, which isn't even a binary. It's a triangle. It's a trinity. Like, we're not even there yet. We're still complaining about binaries. It's a trinity. It's I mean, the United States government was made in like an executive, a legislative, and then this justice branch, and we're just completely destroying it. And it's going to wreck the system. I mean, there is other ways to go. There's a dictatorship. There's, whatever. But we have that too, right? We have like, even in our brain, that's why so much of me being in healthcare and the way that I was always interested in human optimization as opposed to cause and effect, which is what I was trying to, was taught all the time. I just saw it as a holistic system, but it's for this very thing because I can see the cancer in it. I can see the inflammatory markers in society right now. It's just that like it's me understanding human potential and how human beings work and multiple dimensions as a sensory being is not, now it's just bringing that into understanding that this is who we need to be as people who may be the models for the other people who will take it to the bigger masses. It's just that maybe me and you thought, because we were taught, impact means we're doing the whole big, right? Like we're the atomic bomb. But maybe no. Maybe we're the Einstein with the instructions and the different theory that then unlocks the team that then creates the atomic bomb. I can't feel
Holy
bad
shit.
because that's the
That was
level
good.
I can do it.
That is great. That was a great analogy there, Lissette. Man.
It's just understanding that. I mean, Einstein knew he was Einstein, but he wasn't egocentric because he was a very deeply spiritually developed man. What we're watching right now are people who don't understand any sort of spirituality because they believe they are it. And it's just not going to work. I mean, it's just, so we need people to be stepping out like you, owning it.
Yeah. Well, how do we do that? Can you expand more on what we were saying in the post that you wrote about how can I think it was to the effect of like how can men have more of a perspective on how a woman feels, and if they could do that, that's going to help us because I know that that intuition, that feeling, a lot of people, they don't know how to. This is I don't know if that's what you're saying, but people don't know how to feel their body.
Right.
They don't know how to like listen to themselves. They don't know how to trust their gut. They don't know how to trust what is. They don't even know. They're not aware of that.
They're walking around as the imposter. Like they keep talking about imposter syndrome. They're imposters to themselves. They don't know who the hell they are. Like that's why so many people who are like being found, like they're getting a diagnosis of being on the spectrum. It's like, it's just an allowance. You know what I mean? It's an allowance and an acceptance to be able, it's a language. It's a language of deconstruction to be able to explain yourself. But like, how do we do that? What I was talking about in that post was that there's a big resistance culturally. The construct has never been, it's not never, but in recent history has not been to honor the fact that every human being, our first blueprint for relationship from which everything else stems from, the relationship with ourselves creates the self, right? The person that can, whatever, the relationship with others creates how we're navigating and if we're ever going to have enterprise or whatever, right? The relationship with the outer determines how healthy it all goes back, right? Like how healthy we can be in that system, despite everyone knowing all the wisdom, despite everyone, having the wonderful words. What we haven't resolved yet for a majority of people is that the first blueprint for relationship from which everything comes came from you being in your mother's womb. You learned it from a woman. Just accept that. Like you learned it from a woman, good or bad. Yeah. And so if you were someone who inherently wanted to learn and wrestle with that, you probably are somebody who at this point explored your vulnerabilities as well as, like your form and your function. And you've allowed yourself to have a curvy hustle. You've allowed yourself to explore. You've allowed yourself to evolve horizontally and gather, as well as, vertically. But what we don't want to understand is that we need to go deeper before we can go higher. It's like a rebound effect. right? Like if you're jumping from
Yeah.
asphalt, you cannot go as high as when you're on a trampoline because there gets to be depth. And then that helps you. And I think this is what we're seeing right now is like, how can we help men have depth without equating that to being unmasculine? It's not about being more feminine. They have that imprint. Every single human being starts off looking like a female fetus. It's not until you have the hormonal influences to create an external genitalia and have a biosystem like that. That's why there's so much variance. Sometimes some people are XXY, some people are XYY, some people are like there, but everybody's X. Let's just accept that. Some people are double X. Maybe you should listen to the double X's about how it is to be an X, and then use that. And once we kind of resolve that and understand, unfortunately, constructs have made you feel like it's not accept that there's another force. Like I said, there's not just the feminine, but there's literally still like relationship between those aspects we have to confront. But then we can understand we're just asking you to not equate lack of masculine with acceptance of whatever it is that is for you. Whatever love and vulnerability is, please stop. The question is, how can we have men stop thinking that means being less of who they are in whatever they deem that to be powerful? Being a woman does not mean powerless. Doesn't mean weakness. We have been so oppressed that obviously, subconsciously, everyone who's oppressed us must think we're pretty damn strong and powerful. If they thought I was powerless, I would not have all these roles put upon me, all these restraints. So the people who are actually acting like they have so much power obviously must, anyone who oppresses anything within themselves and suppresses it senses a lack of power and control over that. And once we accept that reality, I think all the rest is going to come, Ryan. There's a deep need for spirituality in the United States of America. Probably worldwide, because we've become a powerhouse in telling everybody else how to be.
Yeah. I think that's right on. That if you're oppressing, anyone who oppresses has a lack of something. They have a lack of, whether they realize it or not, they have a lack of power and trust in themselves and others, and they're only cutting themselves short. If you oppress anyone, anything, if you have lack of acceptance, lack of respect for anyone or anything, that's only cutting yourself short. It's only making you less powerful in the first place. And it means that you are insecure and you don't feel like you have the power that you should. So that means you have to oppress someone else, because that's just a level of violence. It's a level of physical oppression that is
it's violence against yourself. That's the thing. They don't understand that. It's violence against yourself. Like you're fooling yourself. You are depleting yourself from the little bit of power you may feel, which may just be at the very root of ego at that point. You are draining it. You are opening up the levee for whatever. That's why people stay angry and stay, it's a matter of, let me control someone else because I inherently have some consciousness that I am out of control. I don't have self-control. That's why all the ancient, whatever books said self-control, self-mastery. It wasn't supposed to be then manipulated into controlling other people. Like the whole field of NLP, that's wonderful. We've developed and understood what we have the potential to do with the power of the word or whatever, but it was manipulated into programming other people's minds so that I don't have to do the work of evolving. I don't have to be a better person. I don't have to rise up to the occasion. I don't have to have 100% accountability in my choices. I'll just say that I'm responsible for this or that when it's good, not when it's bad. I'll blame somebody else for that. And then we're programming a bunch of people to literally just follow the pattern so that I don't have to do the work. That's what we've been taught for 30 years in business development. And that's what we're
Yeah,
seeing.
the shortcut. Yeah, again, yeah, I think you're right that too. That spirituality is what we need more than anything. I mean, I personally attribute all my success to my spirituality, to my affirmation, my belief system, the way that I see and feel that there is one mind in this universe, that my thoughts are the thoughts that are kind of encompassing. Like, you walk into a grocery store and maybe you feel a little down. Have you ever done that? Like, you walk into a place and maybe if you feel a little down, it's kind of like the world, like everyone kind of feels is like a little just down, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are or not. It's just that like wherever you go, all of your energy and your mind is there with you, and you have the power that if somebody can come to you, like when I'm at the check stand, when I was working at the grocery store, somebody can come to me and be in a bad state, and that doesn't mean that's how I have to feel. I can say something, or I can have an energy that can transform that person. um, just knowing, and this is an idea I'm scared of to talk about or share because it seems egocentric, but it's actually the exact opposite, and hopefully I can explain it like that. But I feel like we are all, I am and we are all the one, and we are all the
Mm-hmm.
center of everything, and that this life is for us, and the universe and God has our back always, and everything is love, and everything that we want is like here for us when we know it, when we know that. And you have that, you are that, and it doesn't mean that everyone else isn't. Everyone else is that themselves too. Everyone is that center of everything. So it's like I feel like everything is me and for me, and this is my life, but because of that, that means that I understand that everything else is me too. And that's why I love you, and that's why I love where I live, and I love this tree and this ocean, and I respect you, and I'm curious about you, and I want to get to know you because you're me. You're everything, that the only thing I've got. So it's like this radical self-love is the path to this radical loving of everything, because everything else is you too. And I think
Yeah,
that's a good way to think about it.
well, like you started that off with like it may sound egocentric, but I think there's a difference between understanding yourself being a part of a whole and thinking of yourself as being an individual piece separate from the rest. So again, I don't want to. There is ego, and ego is not bad when you understand it in that level of mature. Again, I think it's a spiritual development that's beyond personal development. Personal development needs to be there for you to have even the capacity to tolerate the stress of knowing what you just said. It's very stressful to know these things when you're watching other people who just don't seem to understand that. And I know our inkling is, well, let me just tell them. But like learning so much of the past 10 years for me has been understanding that I need to be okay with the fact that, and it was having that faith versus fear, that just because it seems like there's a lot of people around me and I can see who don't get that, that it's not going to ruin it for the ability for me to fulfill my significance and my impact and my purpose, and that is along the
Mm.
lines of what you were saying in terms of like the impact of me on myself. I understand there's a connection with other and outer world with that.
Mm. You know what
We
it
just
means
need
too?
leaders that do that. I don't think enough leaders do that. I don't think there's enough
Yeah,
models. You know what I mean? I
because
don't think
I
there's
think it's too
enough.
hard. I think it's really hard, because when you do know that, that means you have responsibility. When you do know that your thoughts and your actions literally do affect everything around you, like that your every thought is putting something out, and it's going to have an effect, and it is going to return, it's going to accumulate. When you know that, that means that you are ultimately responsible for everything. Now that doesn't mean like life still comes, whatever comes, and you accept that and know it's the right thing and you work with it. But still, when you do know that, you have responsibility, and that's a difficult thing.
It is, but that's
Yeah.
you jumped on this bandwagon called life. And I will interject and include one more thing, Ryan, the concept of accountability. Because there's having responsibility and then there's being accountable. I think a lot of people see their role as duty and obligation when they take on responsibilities and then therefore disconnect from the relationship aspect. So then they don't hold themselves accountable. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing right now is that, it became okay to be in control of things, have that responsibility, or want that responsibility only so long as you had control over something,
Mm.
someone, somehow. But when it was, push comes to shove and then you're held accountable for the outcomes, all of a sudden you don't want that responsibility. It was John's problem. He did that. She did that. The
Mm.
scapegoat from because you're lacking relationships. So when you've said what you've said in terms of like carrying the burden, I think that's again our work as spiritually led people to do the work of developing levels of intimacy. So I'm not going to take the weight of everyone here. You know what I mean? Like, this is my place. This is why so much we do the work or whatever to figure out our audience, to figure out where our impact is, to figure out what our career is going to be, to figure out if we want a family, what that means to us. Does that fortify us to go off into the world to do what we need to do? Or are we just looking for an attachment and some place to escape, which will then end up draining us and distracting us, from the work some people run towards something and some people run away from something. Both of them are runners. Both of them might win a marathon, but it's the mentality of how they're doing that, but that's our responsibility. It's hard, but it's also so blessed for success. Like your level of success is not tied into, like, I've had so many successes in life. As soon as I realized it's not tied into everyone else's metric of me, like jumping on that thing of like, this is what I have to have so that so that I prove myself, so that I whatever, like in my clinic, I started that off with the model I had back in 2005. It was like, I had to have the waiting room and 1,400 square feet and this room for this. And I tried to bring in ideas of certain things that I didn't see yet or whatever. But the reality was I was more successful and happy. And I mean financially, emotionally, physically, whatever, when I went and stopped that for a period, rolled it back and ended up getting a 10 by 15 room in another wellness center and restarted and rebooted at that time, the Belly Guru. And then we ended up growing that back into a team environment and did all this other things. The first thing did not hold. And, and now as I move into leadership development, I've been sort of like understanding, I need to go upstream because my leaders are broken when they see me as the Belly Guru. I need to realize, I'm working upstream with the leaders who are teaching the other women's health leaders or whatever, but they're just as sick because they don't got their leadership to actually do healthcare outside the healthcare system, to do that well care, to do the social activism, to do the other stuff we need right now. So it's been a matter of sort of going upstream, like where I need to be. And it's to the point right now where it's like, I can't give the wrong people the tools anymore because there's too many sellouts that were like me that did that. Too many people taught Tony Robbins too many things he shouldn't have known. You know what I mean? That's where we're at.
Yeah. 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 It's right. It's, there's responsibility. This stuff's hard, but it's so much more fulfilling.
Right.
I think if people,
like, it's like so
we can
much,
just help people realize it's worth it. If we can give them
I
a
could
roadmap,
never go back to the
show
other
them it's
thing.
worth
Like
it,
that's, yeah.
yeah,
It's,
it'd
it's,
be horrible. Could never.
it's a sense of inner safety that I think only comes from faith. I mean, it's not like I'm not, like I was talking to my 5-year-old nephew and he was saying he was scared to go to the potty. And I said, you know what, buddy? You can be scared and brave at the same time. Can you be brave? And we're talking about that. I think that's what we're seeing. Like I just feel like I'm just talking to a bunch of, and I did that in my work. I did that though it was called, it was pain, cognitive pain care, because you had to tap into people being like, I understand you're in pain. I'm not going to invalidate your pain. You are creating some of the level of disability from this pain at this point. How can we move forward and be brave? And lo and behold, when we found that trigger and made it more about being the CEO of their life than the manager of their pain control, then all of a sudden they were into their self-leadership and leading their life differently. And all of a sudden, that even though they were in pain, it was not disabling them. I've just now taken this to the social level of pain. But it's the same story. If I was dealing with an adolescent mind who had to be in a diseased state to be listened to because nobody ever heard them or whatever, or this is the only way they get attention in their life or whatever, there was only so much that all my degrees and all of my wonderful modalities and everything else everyone said about me was ever going to do for them. And then I learned to just not take them on as a client and send them to other people who had the capacity to work at that level. I no longer had the social capacity to work with people who are part of the problem now. It's just where I got to be. Unless people are not part of the problem. So I may have to market differently.
Yeah. That's interesting. Just that them putting themselves into a sickness, or people that put themselves in that place because they haven't gotten attention.
It's all
It's
they
like
know.
in that way,
We've done it. We've done it. It's ignorance.
At least though, you can see that it can be removed or it can be changed. It's not that you were just, I don't know, you were born some certain way, or some wires are like, maybe some wires are crossed, but it's just that, no, this is what's happening. This was maybe happening in your life, and you're kind of putting yourself in this state, and we can get you out of it. We just have to, you can change so quickly, right?
Ryan, some people don't want to, and I think that's some of our responsibility right now, and some of the hard work is that when we see somebody who is not ready, might want to, but is not ready, having someone in our network that we refer them to, so that that person in our network gets them ready for us. So we need to have that quality of network interchange, which I think we need to develop better, because so much competition, nobody thinks to do that. I know when I was working as a clinical physical therapist, people wouldn't understand. It's like they wouldn't trust when I'd send somebody there for the hands-on work because I had so much of the other stuff to do. They were like, why are you giving me this person? Like, what's the deal? Are you trying to spy on my practice? Like, that's their problem. I was going to give them literal business, but the deal was when this person's ready for this stuff, you send them back. I really got them to send them back and do that work. So that's why I'm developing an ecosystem, and I'm teaching a leadership, but I'm teaching it to people who have the capacity to do something with it. It's not just for them to get their systems into something that they feel spiritually okay and structurally okay and personally okay with, but literally let's just both admit your career is probably as an activist and you've been masking it in marketing. Let me get, Ryan, you've been masking your activism in marketing.
Yeah.
Let's just get real here.
That's what I do feel like that. I want to be an activist.
So let me help you be the activist.
I want to get out. I want to yell at people. I want to be super polarizing and yell crazy opinions about politics. And I want to
it's just, you got to know the room.
There is a part of me that doesn't want to do that.
You just got to know the room. We're working in different rooms, and in different rooms. This is why you make things like intimacy levels. That's what I was talking about. There's just different places I'm going to work with people. Not everything's going to be on social media now. We're learning. There's just certain things. I know, give your best self, give it for free, but your best self at the level of capacity for the masses. We're just going to have to do a little bit more pruning for the gardens that we're growing. You and I are growing gardens. Some people are just seeding things. Some people are just getting the fruit. We just need communities that sort of see us in those gifts and our talents, and then plug ourselves in without feeling bad that we're not the fruit takers and we're not whatever. It's not that we can't be. It's not like we can't get ourselves in a position where we create a line of that. But isn't it going to be easier to create a line of that when you've made some fruit pickers and they can then help you and mentor you and get you accelerated at that point in that line for you? Because they know how to be in your system already. They're not going to screw you because you went and gave them a tool that they're never going to give anything back into the system for. I have
Yeah,
no
it's like, sure, you can
desire of
give.
getting anybody strong now who's going to do harm with it.
Yeah, either do harm or they just don't know what
Don't
to
use
do
it,
with it. You can
which is
give
harm.
people all the tools,
Which
yeah,
is
they don't
harm.
use it.
That's harm.
Hmm,
People have to understand
very good point.
if you're not showing up right now, and again, there's different levels to it. I get it. If you're like energetically depleted, it's a lot or whatever. That's why I sort of moved away from the clinical aspect and then doing leadership. I kind of need them at a place where they're maybe not 100% healthy, but they know enough of how to not be unhealthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've just got to figure it out.
Yeah. Lissette, I just realized I've got a call that I have to go to.
Yeah, no, that we're we could talk forever on this, but thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
hope you can use
Yeah.
this even for
I thought
yourself
I
because I
thought it
know
was
that
a.
you're a wonderful
Oh yeah.
garden grower.
Yeah. I thought it was a 4:30, but it's like a 4:15 kind
No
of thing.
problem.
But okay, there. I'm gonna end this